We've been on adventures to a spooky house and a spooky observatory, so let us sit and tell you about them. Also, Jen has a ghost story. More to come on this episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities presents the Hometown Haunts podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fabulous I want to say adventure, but this is an episode of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities presents the Hometown Haunts podcast. I am your host, Kat Cloco, and along with me in the shadows is Christina Wald and Jen Kohler. Hello.
Hello.
It's just us tonight. We have no guests popping up from the ceiling or the basement to say hello. So, hello. Everyone. It's us.
Hey, how's it going? It is us.
It is
Isn't that
us.
a TV show? It is us. That is us.
I think it is. Yeah, this is
This is us.
This is us.
Okay. Yeah, shows how much TV I watch. Anyway, you can follow us on social media at Cin Cabinet Curio on Twitter, at Cincy Cabinet of Curiosities on Instagram, and of course, we want your hometown haunts. Please send them to hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com so that we can read them with you, I guess. And we can comment on it. It was great. Yeah, this has been a long day. All right. And also, Christina created a Facebook group for everyone to hang out and tell their own spooky stories. You can find us at Facebook at Hometown Haunts. And yeah, we're already sharing spooky stories and just fun life events.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the biggest life event happening right now in our neck of the woods, it's our Kickstarter for the second issue of the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities, Trails, Trains, and Terror. And Christina, do you want to say the very good news?
We are funded.
We are funded. I feel like we need an air horn. But anyway.
No, I'll find something in my sound effects box.
Yeah.
Expect some sort of bizarre sound here inserted. And so now
Natty Skull.
Yes. And so now we can concentrate on our stretch goals. As many know, we are going to do an issue 3 if we get to $8,000. So
yes.
We put a lot of work into each issue, and that actually isn't that much when you consider about the printing and the shipping and the paying the artists. And really, the more we make off the Kickstarter, the more the artists get paid. And to me, that is the best stretch goal possible.
Yeah, that really is employing our own Cincinnati homegrown artists.
Yes. I mean, when you think about publishing these days and just the state of a lot of things, it's really important to compensate the artists and help them make a living. I've been seeing that meme everywhere where it says, that local art doesn't come in on a container ship. And that's true. Investing in local artists is so important, not just the comic, but, go to art fairs and buy art from people. We've got the Christmas season, holiday season coming up. Support local artists. There's a lot of great ones.
Yeah.
It's a important part of the community.
Oh, yeah, it is. And our job here with the Cincinnati Cabinet of Curiosities is to really preserve the folklore here in Cincinnati, especially as it is right now. It's always a great look into really what people are afraid of and concerned about at the time. And folklorists love it. But it's for those of you who have not, I don't know how yet, but that's because I'm just living through it. If you have not checked out the second issue, it covers the Sorg Opera House, the Chillicothe Gazette with a personal ghost story from Kevin Necessary, who is a regional Emmy Award winner. 2 stories featuring the Crosswick Monster, which is our cryptid du jour this year, the Screaming Bridge and Ma Hughes Road, and of course, the wonderful case of Laura Pruden, the psychic medium, and the invention of the magic 8-ball, brought to you by Christina Wald.
And Jeff Cease.
And Jeff Cease. Yes. Jeff would be upset if I did not mention Jeff Cease.
He wrote it.
He wrote it. You illustrated it.
He came up with the hook for it, which I really love the hook of telling it from the point of view of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I know there are many Sherlock fans in this everywhere, not just Cincinnati. And he was a huge fan of spiritualism. Some might say a little gullible, but perhaps strangely had an affinity for this, considering how logical his character was.
Yeah, nah. But, well, I'm a cultural anthropologist that sees dead people, so I kind of get it. It's a weird compartmentalization that has to happen. But also, going back to the Kickstarter, Kevin Necessary just opened up some tiers for those of you who want, what is it? He's doing ink drawings and pencil sketches.
No, he's doing 3 avatars. So if you want to have your avatar drawn by Kevin, you better get onto it quick before it sells. And he's doing 3 ink sketches. So
yes,
those will probably get snapped up really fast. So act on it before they're gone.
Yeah. And like Christina said, we're trying to get to 8,000. You can always overfund a Kickstarter. You can always go over 100%. Math doesn't work here in that way. So you could do more than 100%.
Well, when you think about it, the goal is like the minimum amount we need, but these days, especially with printing, and I mean, the printing just between this year and last year raised like 20%.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of costs are kind of fluctuating anyway. So,
that reminds me, our printing is done here in Cincinnati. We don't ship it to any other, it doesn't go out of the country to get printed. It is a local printer here. So we try to keep the project as much contained in the region as possible, just because we're artists supporting other artists. So if you're wondering where it gets printed, it is a printing company here in Cincinnati.
Yes. So it's really great. Like we were just saying, it's all part of the community, and the lore is part of the community.
Yes.
Even though there's something unique to each community about their lore, and yet ubiquitous.
Yeah, exactly. So
but anyway, and speaking of lore, you and I have been on a couple ghost hunts.
Yes, we have. I was going to ask Jen, what have you been up to?
Oh, yes. Jen's been on her own adventures.
Yeah, you have.
Okay. Sorry if my thingy rubbed. Well, ooh, that sounded bad. You cut that, please.
I don't know. It's pretty funny.
That is really funny.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We're a little.
Your microphone?
My microphone. Yeah. I was on vacation and I went to Disney and then came back, got back into the humdrum of things. And then last weekend I went to visit, not last weekend, the weekend before last, went to visit my friend Christine, who was walking in a breast cancer fundraiser fashion show.
Oh, fun.
Yes. And my friend Christine, I always refer to her as that. She is a sensitive person and has taken a class at the spiritualist place in Indy.
Oh, okay.
What's in the Chesterfield?
Camp Chesterfield.
Yes. So, and I'll just leave it at that for her background. And so we were both exhausted. She had gotten a hotel room that night because the event was in a hotel. And so we just ended up staying in the hotel. And I think it was probably before midnight when we went to bed. And I have no idea what time of morning this happened, but the hotel room was completely dark. It was completely silent. Like I didn't have a fan on. The air conditioning wasn't running. And I was kind of halfway in between sleep and kind of waking up, and like I wasn't fully conscious, but enough to know that I'm probably going to have to pee soon. So
yeah,
as it is, as you get older, you have to pee in the middle of the night all the time. So
hey, I've been doing that since I was 2. So see a lot of ghosts that way too, by the way.
Yeah, since they seem to frequent bathrooms.
Which reminds me of, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is more fine. for next week. Have I ever told you about my first ghost sighting?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe. Tell it
Okay.
again.
No, I'm not doing it now. I will do it next
Okay.
week when we're sharing
Okay.
their stories. So, okay, go back. So it is like
Sometime
2,
in the middle of the
3
night.
a.m. Okay. in the middle of the night.
Somewhere around there. I mean, like there was no sun or anything. So I am facing towards Christine's direction, and I believe she's facing towards mine because she was in her queen bed. I was in my queen bed. And I just hear, "Hey, Jenny."
Ah!
I'm not done. I have something to tell you.
Ah!
Christine has to poop.
Oh.
Or something to that effect. Christine had to poop. I had to poop. This thing had to poop. Something about poop. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I'm a little freaked out. But I do have to pee. So I got up to pee, went back to bed. Went to pee, went back to bed and fell asleep. So I woke up in the morning and I'm like, so Chris, were you talking to me in your sleep last night? Did you happen to say, "Hey, Jenny"? No, I was out. Okay. So, and then I explained to her what happened and she just started laughing her ass off. Okay. She goes, "Yeah, that was Raindrop." I'm like, "Pray tell, who and what is Raindrop?" "She's my spirit guide. She's my joy spirit guide." And I said, And as we kept talking, she's like, "Yep, Raindrops." She's laughing. She think it's funny. She's just messing with you. And that was it.
Wow.
But I distinctly heard this.
That is the best ghost message I think I've ever heard.
Yeah. And she was just having fun.
That's like a Hall of Famer kind of thing.
That is, if you're going to get something whispering in your ear, at least it was a joke and not like, "Get up," or something like that.
No, God, no. I would have screamed had it been that.
Yeah.
But no,
I probably just freaked out a bunch of people with my wonderful brain.
For anyone that was listening while they were falling asleep, just woke up. People with their earbuds in, kind of dozing off,
I'm so sorry, everyone. I missed my calling as a metal band member.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's never too late.
It's true.
No. But she has offered to take me up there to the spiritualist place. It might be interesting.
That would be so cool. We should all go.
Let's all go.
So she explained to me that in the class they help you find your spirit guides, and I guess you have more than one.
You can, yeah.
And her Raindrop is her kind of her just joy. She's like a 5-year-old little kid that just is always wanting to play and be happy. And
I was going to say the somebody needs to poop thing. Before you said it was a spirit guide, my guess was this hotel is haunted by a small child or two, because that is definitely something that a prankster kid would do. That is easily between the ages of 5 and 10. So
humor never gets old.
I was more expecting for her to say something like that, but when she said spirit guide, or when she just said Raindrop, I'm like, excuse me, what?
Yeah.
She's never told me about Raindrop or any of her spirit guides.
Is a disarming name for someone.
Yeah.
Or something.
And Christine seems to think, so we had a balloon in the room because at the event there were all these tons of pink balloons, and I may or may not have tried to grab about 100 of them and stuff them in my car, and it didn't work, and I had to pop half of them in the garage, and it sounded like gunfire. So we had one in the hotel room, and she thinks that's what kind of brought Raindrop out. She wanted to kind of play, and
that could be it. Yeah.
It was an interesting.
It sounds
very interesting experience.
That is an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, was that your first paranormal experience?
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good one.
And it wasn't, it freaked me out a little bit, but it didn't, I did not feel like I was surrounded by malevolence or You know, that's fine.
good.
If you want to fuck with me and it's funny, okay, fine. Just don't.
It
threaten-
knew you
don't
were a
threaten to
fan
kill
of.
me.
It knew you were a connoisseur of fine comedy.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, and who's to say? I'm like, is it? I had asked Christina, is it just because, you know, I'm with you? And she's like, well, you're a little bit more open than you used to be. And she said that Raindrop doesn't really do this to other people, but it was, she just maybe couldn't have helped herself. And Christine had a really good day that day. So I don't know.
So that's kind of interesting, you know, because a lot of people talk about having spirit guides. Are they often people, or are they some sort of other entity, or?
They're with whatever you really click with. So some people will say they're like saints or angels, if that's how you want to interpret them. Some others will say they're a type of a spirit animal or a family member. It's whoever you want to interpret and click with it the best. So I have 2 spirit guides. Sometimes it's 3, but it hasn't been a crisis for a while, so we've stuck with 2. And yeah, I used to talk to them all the time when I was a little kid. Freaked my parents out. And yeah, so if your kids are talking to someone and you don't think there's anything wrong, because I will also say kids that are abused will talk to themselves as well. There is a coping mechanism with talking to yourself, but I would actually talk to and respond to something not in the room, like not someone that my parents could see. And that was Sam. And yeah, I have, that's how I communicate with the dead. I don't communicate directly with a dead person. It all has this little buffer. So yeah, and that's what a spirit guide kind of is they will help guide you through things. If you're having a tough time, they'll send you signs to help with decision making. But if you're talking to the dead as frequently as I do, they act as a buffer, so nothing actually can attach and make things really difficult. So yeah, like that's probably what Raindrop does, is act as a buffer to your friend.
Well, and Chris, she also told me that like I have always felt like my dad was hanging around me. And I'm not Christian, but I always liked the idea of a guardian angel. So I guess I kind of always thought of my dad as kind of like that. And a few months ago when Christine was here, she's like, yeah, your dad talked to me. If you ever want to, he's like, if you ever want to, and I think it was through something, I don't know. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. Don't really know how to take that, but okay. But I mean,
he's around to talk if you want to talk to him, basically. Right.
And she has told me that she has seen my dad around me a lot. And you and was it Amy?
Ashley?
One of them, Amanda. It was Amanda. Said that you saw someone by me that one time when we were talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not as scary as I thought it would be.
Yeah. It's
kind of fun at this point. So
yeah. And that's how it should be. It should be fun and comforting. It's I hate to disappoint all the horror movie buffs, but really the paranormal is nowhere near as scary as people want the movies make it out to be. Like it just really isn't. And it's more comforting because you're trying to cope with the loss of family members, and this is a way of still talking to them. So
well, and it's nice to think there's something out there that's protecting you from, swerving into oncoming traffic.
Or sending
someone,
like sending you prophetic dreams of warning you or something like that. A lot of that. Or more new age people will believe in them accessing the spirit guides, accessing the Akashic records and all that. So which I think we've talked about in a different episode.
I forget which episode we talked about it, but we haven't mentioned them
dozens of episodes ago now. But yeah, spirit guides are handy. And Make it sound like they're a cell phone that you keep in your pocket.
Now, don't piss them off, Kat.
No, there's memes, especially with spirit mediums, that circle around, which is like Captain Picard with his face palming, and the caption is what my spirit guide is doing right now. Like, I have seen those memes.
There was the post that you did last week. I don't know if you want to talk about it this week or hold off to our extravaganza and tell a story.
No, then. I can tell it now because I have so many ghost stories I could share with everyone. And yeah, as a sneak peek for next week's episode, it's our 50th episode. So we are doing a ghost story bonanza, or hometown haunt bonanza. So if you like to share your own spooky stories, personal ghost encounters, we are collecting them. It's also our Halloween episode, and we will share them on air, and I will probably bore people to death with my own ghost experiences. So yeah, it will be fun. I love listening to other people's ghost encounters.
So tell us about this one you just said last week about
your
son.
Yeah, this one does not have, I honestly did not see what he was seeing, but I believe him, so we went with it. So a few of you may know that we lost our dog Wheatley in the last day of July this year. He died after a 5-year battle with anal sac adenocarcinoma, which is a very fancy word to say butt cancer. And he fought forever, but he did peacefully fall asleep here at home with an aid of a very special veterinarian. So it's been kind of an adjustment. We are always used to having a lot of pets in this house, and suddenly we're sans our most mischievous dog. And he followed us everywhere. He followed my son everywhere, and basically made sure that little guy never got into any real harm, along with our other dog Chewy, and sometimes occasionally our third dog Mickey. Wheatley was very distinct. If you have never seen a photo of him, we have Portuguese water dogs, and if you think of a poodle, standard size poodle, slightly shorter and stockier and fluffier, that is a Portuguese water dog, and they're very goofy. They have a very gregarious attitude, and he looked like just a super fluffy Dalmatian. So think white and black spots. So we actually last week went to a friend's house who lives on a farm, and Mickey and Chewy came with us and ran through every bramble bush known to man to have grown on this farm, and then swam through the pond that houses a colony of muskrats. My dogs stank. They were so smelly, and I had 40-minute drive back to Cincinnati with 2 damp dogs and a toddler going, "Mommy, they smell. Mommy, they smell. Mommy, they smell." And I'm like, I am aware they smell. So we get home, and I rush the dogs upstairs to go take a bath so I can start the detangling process of what ended up being thousands of burrs in their coats.
Gosh.
We're still picking them out, but we got them out of the sensitive areas, like their toes and their ears, and made sure they weren't up their noses and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
So 2 dog baths done. Dogs smell a lot better. The water was soup green. It was bad. God. And little guy helps me dry the dogs. He loves helping me bathe the dogs. And he runs past our staircase, and our staircase has a landing halfway through. And he looks down, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Wheatley's turn." And I'm like, "Wheatley's turn?" And he's like, "Wheatley bath now." And I'm like, well, if Wheatley would like a bath, then sure, he could come get a bath. So I opened the gate that's at the top of the staircase. I don't know why I did, because I know Wheatley could have walked through that thing. But I'm like, okay, Wheatley, it's time to go take a bath. And little guy points to my bedroom and goes, "He's in there now." And I'm like, well, that's not where the bath is. Wheatley hates taking baths. Hates it. We'd have to pick him up and put him in the tub. Other 2 dogs, fine. They'll get in on their own. Wheatley hates it. So I walk into the bedroom and I go, okay, little dude, where is Wheatley? Because I wasn't seeing him. But like I said, I wasn't not thinking little dude couldn't see him. And he points out like beyond the bed where Wheatley is. And I'm like, okay, Wheatley, it's time to come. Let's go take a bath now. And then little dude looks at me and he goes, Wheatley's hiding. No bath. So Wheatley did not get a bath, but I tried. And I'm thinking, and I've had my suspicions through the years that he may be a touch sensitive, if not more attuned than I am. And because he was talking to Bill, who's a resident ghost, when he was 2.5. I caught him talking to Bill, and I'm like, Bill, that's not cool. Don't do that. Mm-mm. Bill has
Leave my son alone.
Yeah, Bill has not talked to little dude since then. But I was just like, no, dude, that's a little weird. But Wheatley, that's fine. So yeah. So yeah, that is little dude's ghost story. He will be way too young to ever remember this, but now it's saved.
Yes, and he can.
It's archived now. That this is what happened. So it was a thing, and I have seen Wheatley once in a while around the house. Usually it will be, I'll catch the little top of his hair. The top of his head was white. It had a little white patch. I'll see that behind the table, or I'll see the white end of his tail, the hair on the end of his tail.
Aww.
And I'll see it like duck right behind a couch. So, or enter into, when we had his crate set up, I would see it enter into the crate because that's where he would sleep at night. He loved being in his crate. So yeah, he remembers it. And there was a time in August, mid-August, around his birthday, what would have been his 10th birthday. I was just in bed, in the morning where you're like, I don't want to get up. And I could feel a dog jump onto bed, and it was really heavy. And Wheatley was our biggest of the three. And I felt him flop down, because he would just, instead of, gracefully flopping down a few legs at a time, he would just go boom. And then I could feel his head on my hand. So he's still around, and it'll be interesting to see how the new addition the new dog, we're getting a puppy, yay, will take to seeing Wheatley around, because I'm sure the dogs see him too.
Now you have don't you have a rabbit or something too?
We do have one ancient rabbit. I think he's ready to start doling out like sage advice and fortunes to busy travelers along the road. He's 13.
Whoa!
Wow!
I don't think I've ever heard of a rabbit living that long.
That's surprising.
What is their life expectancy?
It depends on the size and the breed. So Chewy, no. Sammy is a English spot lion head mix that we got from a shelter in Lafayette, Indiana, back in 2008. And he is now completely blind. And we let him out about every day for about an hour, and he basically just sits in one place now. But Chewy loves him and will just groom him, which is why I think he's still alive, because he knows he gets a lot of love and attention. So yeah, we got Sammy. And yeah, Sammy will hear things now, but he's so old, it's like great grandpa freaking out at a chair moving. He's just like, what's that? He still has his hearing though, but yeah, shocked by everything all the time.
Aww.
Yep.
So ghost hunts,
we've been on a few.
Yeah, it's been a fun couple of weeks.
It's like you started ghost hunting and we just keep going to everything. Every ghost hunt, I feel like Spiritual Realm Paranormal is about to be like, stop buying the tickets. Stop it.
No, they seemed very, especially at the observatory. It was kind of like going to Cheers.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. It was, hey, cat.
And they were asking you about what you were feeling and stuff too. So that was cool.
Yeah, I
thought it
was
was
a
really
resident medium that time. So should we start with the Benninghoffen and then move on to the observatory? Because they both had a lot go on. But
Still salty. I missed it.
you have to, I really think, and we were talking to Ashley today, that you need to go to the Benninghoffen house. And I discovered there's two of them. But I mean, it's open, it's a museum, and it's open during the day, and it is going to be creepy no matter what time of day you go.
Okay.
So yeah, especially right now, they have everything dressed up as in morning attire for the house. So
it'll change after the 31st, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Then it will be in creepy Christmas.
Hop to it.
Okay.
It'll be feather trees galore for Christmas. So
we'll let you do the history. I'll kind of have it focus on you. And
okay. Oh, all right. Yeah.
I know, right?
I'll mute myself so I don't rub my thingy.
Oh, geez.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry, not
I'm
sorry.
punchy tonight, so all right. So okay, the history is not too long, everyone, because this is a very old house, but it's also the Butler County Historical Society, their main offices. So if you want to learn more about the actual building, I encourage you to go visit their website, and they have a huge listing about everything, every land transfer, everything about the place. It's really good. But for those of you listening, what is important to know is that the John W. Benninghoffen, that he purchased the house from a lawyer, Noah C. McFarland, and Benninghoffen was the owner of the Schuler, one of the owners of the Schuler and Benninghoffen wool mills in Hamilton, Ohio. So they made fabrics. They also started making paper later in the industry. Big part of bringing the Industrial Revolution to Hamilton, Ohio. When Pauline Benninghoffen, who was John's surviving daughter, when she died in 1947, she willed the estate to the city of Hamilton, and the house was built between 1861 and 1863. But the Benninghoffens, I believe, they put on an addition, which is also super haunted. Every room has its own little resident ghost. I won't say little. There's multiple ones, and really, I think Christina, do you want me to go? Sorry, this is just an editorial note. Do you want me to go with all the different ghosts that are there that I didn't see first, or that we did encounter, and then do the ones we didn't see?
I would say the ones we saw first, because that's the most interesting. The ones we didn't see, that's sort of like a after, and maybe we'll see them, or you'll see them. I didn't see any.
That's true. Well, actually, it would be good to start with your impressions of the place before mine.
Change the view here. I was thinking it was just a really cool house. It was they had it all set up with cameras, and of course they had the dowsing rods and all the different equipment to what's the thing that does the kinetic capture?
Okay, that was what were they calling it? Oh man, not the obelisk. So it's sorry, I forget what they call it. You just asked me and went whoo.
I want to say it's like a Connect thing or something.
Connect is what it is. It's for the Xbox. It's just the Xbox Connect. It's still that same technology.
Mm-hmm. And I mean that was all really cool. They were seeing something on there. I feel like I didn't really see anything. The place was definitely cool. They had a big art display by Robert McCloskey, who is a Caldecott winning artist, and I was really enjoying seeing all of his originals. But I remember, I went down to sketch in the basement because I brought my sketchbook, and it had all this really cool old kitchen stuff, like old ovens and stuff. And you came down and you said, "Oh my gosh, there's all these presences here." And I was like, "Oh, I was just looking at the cool kitchens."
There's a lot of neat stuff down there, and I feel bad for the ghosts that are down there because they kind of get forgotten. But yeah, we can talk about it. So it was spooky. I think it was interesting having such a time capsule of a building attached to then their archives and then a event hall, and then there is a basement too. So it was kind of a strange juxtaposition between the actual event space and their archives and then the actual house. But
my favorite thing was that circus playset that they had. They had a
God, that was huge
circus, and it had the creepiest looking clowns you've ever seen. You know, I kind of wish that at these hunts they just left the lights on, because I don't think it would be less creepy. I think it would be even creepier with the lights.
Why don't you talk about the sitting through Ashley's readings?
Oh yes.
Well, I skip off for a second.
Okay. Yes, it was the first time that I've been to a reading before.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because she gets her impressions and writes them down, and was getting readings on a lot of people in the room. She didn't see anything around Kat or myself. And she felt really bad afterwards. She was like, I didn't see anything around you. I'm sorry I didn't. And it's like, there's nothing you could do about that. It's just the way these things are.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah, but you know what it kind of reminded me of? There's this game we play occasionally called Mysterium. And its premise is not that different from how the reading was. Like in the game, it's kind of like a spooky version of Clue, and you have these dream cards, and you're trying to figure out who murdered someone and where, and it has these like abstract paintings that you have to describe for people to figure out who the murderer was. And it very much felt like that, where it's sort of like you get these impressions and colors and feelings and people saying stuff, and you're trying to figure out who it's around. And perhaps your friends talked a little bit about that too.
No, you know, she's always been kind of it took her a while to open that side of her up to me. And now, I mean, she told me years ago, I mean, her first experience is amazing, and I'm sorry to leave you hanging, but I'm not going to tell it here, but because I'm hoping to convince her to come on and talk about her experiences. But she kind of every now and then lets things slip. I mean, she said when she talked to my dad, it was 10 years ago when I moved into the house. So, and she didn't tell me until this year.
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of worry when you tell someone that you're talking to someone, because people might think you're crazy or think you're weird, or, you know,
I've never thought she was
the way you'd hoped.
I've never thought she was crazy. I think she just knew I wasn't open to it, and I wasn't ready to hear anything about that. So yeah, I mean, I guess I've opened myself up to it a little bit more through doing the podcast. And
I mean, I wish I saw some of the stuff that people see when we're, you know, at those places, like when we went to the Doty house and stuff like that. You know, it would be interesting to see. Did you see anything when we were at the Doty house? Did you see or feel anything?
No. And I can't help but wonder the reason why I had this experience this last weekend is because of Christine. And like the voice wasn't like right up next to me in my ear. It wasn't like she was standing next to me. I thought Christine was whispering to me. You know, I thought it was her at first, and I'm like, no, she generally does not talk like that in her sleep. So like I've woken myself up before talking. You know,
interesting. So you talk in your sleep?
Oh God, yeah. And most recently I had a nightmare, and I haven't had a nightmare in a long time. And I woke up screaming, "Who the fuck are you?"
I think you talked about it on the podcast. Yeah, I seem to recollect.
And I was just like, well, what the hell was that? You know, and that's the most recent case. And it just sometimes I wake myself up laughing.
Interesting.
You know, but I really do think my experience was because Christine was there. And obviously Raindrop was there because of Christine. And I told my nephew about it, and he was just like, ghosts aren't real. And I said, no, why aren't they real? Because they're monsters, and monsters aren't real. I said, well, not all of them are mean. Not all of them are monsters.
Mhm.
Oh, he did not like the fact that Raindrop could be real. And he's like, Raindrop won't come here. Well, she's only around Christine, honey. And if she does and you don't want her there, you just tell her to go away. Say, you are not allowed to be in my house. But this isn't my house, it's Mama's house.
Well, that's kind of an interesting what's the word, contradiction that you're told kind of as a kid, where you're told like a lot of stuff's not real, but then you're told some contradictory stuff is. And so
Yeah.
I think that's probably why I was somewhat skeptical as a kid, even about religion and everything, because I was when I was a little kid, I was super into fantasy and witches and all this stuff. And when I was told all that stuff was not real, I think I just was like, well, if the cool stuff's not real.
I know. And I was always afraid of it because I thought it was real. Like I thought the vampires were real, and I would have to, cover my neck when I slept at night because they were going to come in and eat me. And if they didn't see my neck, I didn't have one. So, yeah.
But we were talking about how in the reading, basically Ashley gets a lot of impressions of things. Like she gets, I want to say it's almost like a piecemeal of details, sort of.
It's a huge, just flood of information being sent over.
It's confusing because you don't know what goes to who.
Yep.
Did she figure out was it related to anybody there?
Oh, yes.
Like that was attending the event?
Couple people that had some fairly active family members.
Yes, there was 3. And there was one where you could tell if family members were screaming to be heard, because this woman walked in and not her energy, but the energy around her was just so intense. And I even physically just leaned away like this. Great for video. I leaned away from her just to kind of get out of that little force field, because it was just too much. And then once she was the reading that was first, and Ashley pointed to her, and I was just like, it has to be her, because if you don't shut them up, we're not going to be able to read anybody else. So they were artificially spiking up the energy. And then once they were read, they backed off. But
oh, wow.
And both of us sensed the same thing. And the really weird one was there was not weird, like no one's ever weird, even though I say stay weird. Anyway, interesting thing, was there was a girl. Did you talk about Winnie the Pooh?
Mm-mm. Yes, she kept seeing Winnie the Pooh. Ashley kept seeing Winnie the Pooh. There was this teen who was there, and I don't know how much about the other members. We didn't talk. I didn't know how confidential a lot of that stuff is. I don't know.
I won't get into it then.
Yeah.
But there was a girl who was getting a reading, and Ashley and I both picked up on a blue car getting into an accident. And when we asked the room, we're like, why are 2 mediums getting a blue car, like a very obviously blue car, like cornflower blue, if anyone knows that color, colored car getting into an accident? And no one was saying that was theirs. And I'm like, clearly, why did we both pick up on this? We're sitting on opposite sides of the event space. She was up near the stage and I was all the way in the back. And both of us picked up on that.
Perhaps that was something that had to do more with the space than with the people there.
Maybe it could have been that. There's artifacts everywhere, which is fantastic. And if you're a medium, it's hell, because everything has something attached to it. And you're just sitting there going, oh, really? Does this have to have an attachment? A sewing machine, really? Or like the spoon. Sincerely, there's a spoon that has a little girl ghost attached to it. Like, these are just examples, not actually at Benninghoffen. But I mean, the things that people get attached to is just amazing. And I used to kind of doubt ghosts being attached to just items until I was dealing with my mother's own psychosis. And then I got it. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
now I get how people are so attached to items. So,
So what
'Cause
about Winnie the Pooh? Is that something you don't want to share? Because
well, this I don't think was that. This
I don't
wasn't
think
that
this is
personal. There was some
identifying
other
at
stuff
all.
that was pretty personal that I don't know if
Yeah,
I'd want to.
this one was silly.
But yeah.
So Ashley was, and to a limited extent me, but Ashley's much better than me as a medium. There was a Winnie the Pooh. We kept getting flashes of Winnie the Pooh, and no one would also own up to that. And Ashley's like, why does he keep showing me Winnie the Pooh? Why Winnie the Pooh? And then somebody kind of rose their hand and said, oh, I dressed up as Winnie the Pooh for Halloween a few years ago. And we're like, seriously? That was you. That was you.
so is that's coming from the person, not necessarily a spirit around
That was
them.
the spirit telling Ashley and an extent myself. I wasn't getting told explicitly who it was belonged to, but a spirit who was trying to communicate through Ashley to their friend was saying Winnie the Pooh dressed up Winnie the Pooh. But with a lot of these messages, it's a lot like a bad case of telephone, where you'll get, and I'll give an example a little bit later at Benninghoffen, but it's you get bits and pieces, and it's a little bit of a mystery that putting it together, and then once it's all together, you're like, oh, that was so easy. Why didn't I get that the first time?
Is it kind of like being at a party and you're overhearing snippets of conversation?
Yeah, it's exactly like being at a party, and that's exactly how it was there that night, because not only did everyone have their own spirits that were trying to communicate brought in, because Ashley was doing a reading.
I didn't know we were getting a reading, so that's why
that was part of the VIP package. That's what made it different.
But I guess I just didn't.
And I've never sat through a reading before.
I'm really mad I missed it. I wanted to see Ashley do her thing.
It was very cool.
You got to go on the Haunted Mansion ride, so
it's not the same. Although it was pretty fun. Haunted Mansion's fun.
Yeah. So someday we'll get you to do one with Ashley. Hopefully she'll come up with something. Christina and I struck out. She just looked at us and went,
like, nope, nothing.
Wah, wah. And I'm I'm not surprised because I chat with them already. So
and it could be there were so many other things in the room I didn't know what was happening, because she said that since people knew what was happening, that kind of opened the door too.
Yes, it floodgates it, which is what happens at Benninghoffen too. Just as that was the first time I've ever been there. There are so many ghosts there that once they realize that you're able to speak to them, they just brigade you. And they're just like, I need to talk about what tuna fish sandwich order I want. And then there's like a bunch of them screaming all sorts of stuff like that. So it gets nonsense.
There was that creepy doll that was in the main room.
Yeah, so we can start with that.
Let's
the parlor.
Start with creepy doll.
We'll start with the creepy doll. And Jen, I know I sent you a video of the flashlight turning on and off by itself on top of the creepy doll.
We have video and we have photos that we'll put in the
notes.
And for people listening on iTunes, go over to or listening in Spotify or whatever, go to YouTube and take a look at the stuff if you want to, because there was some pretty creepy footage. Yeah,
we caught some creepy footage. No ghosts, but we got equipment acting strange. So for those of you who haven't been on a ghost hunt, one of the things that we do use are analog flashlights that are the Maglite flashlights. So you have the screw top, and you basically unscrew it to the point where the battery compartment can't really touch the coils of the light to complete the circuit. And the hypothesis is with that spirits can basically act as the completion of the circuit and turn the lights on and off as they want to communicate. Jen saw this at Doty Homestead. So did you, Christina. We had a really good session with the lady of the house there on the Doty Homestead. Same thing went here, except for instead of a pioneer woman completing the circuit and talking to us, it was a doll. It was a possessed doll.
Fuck you, no. Sorry. I don't want to see that. I know.
So we walk in, and Christina, what did you first think about the parlor?
It was, I mean, like, the thing I was thinking was, why is everything so dark? It was kind of like, I wish that they would have, because I'm always worried about tripping over something and breaking something, because they had like equipment on the floor with, I mean, that doll certainly was really creepy.
Yes.
I don't get much of a vibe off stuff. And,
that one was sending off major vibes. Like, I walked in and I immediately just looked at this casket they had on display.
I mean, it certainly looked creepy. Like, they had cloth over all the mirrors because it was kind of set up in the, what did you call it? It was
morning. It's in morning attire,
where they have how they did it in the 1800s. All mirrors would be covered, and you have this casket with a doll in it in the main, what do you call, living room. It was definitely weird.
It was the front parlor, and they had the casket. It was a wicker casket, and they had it specially made for this display. So it was a brand new casket. It wasn't one that you would find at, let's say, the Museum of Mortuary History that's outside Oklahoma City. Like, I've seen that real ones. They're surprisingly shallow. But anyway, they had this doll propped up in it. And I look at that and I'm like, there is something up with this doll. I don't know what it is. I walked in too late to hear any of the history on purpose. And I point to one of the paranormal team members and I'm like, what is up with this doll? What is up with it? Like, why is its energy just shooting through the charts high? And they're like, well, you didn't hear the story. And I'm like, okay, so clearly something is super attached to this doll. I believe they called it Carolyn or Caroline. Caroline, I thought
so too.
And it just talks through this doll, and that's really kind of creepy. Now, looking through, the Benninghoffens were German immigrants. And if it was, did I keep up the thing? I may not have. That name is actually important to the family. Let me find where I put find a grave. Recently closed. I guess I closed it so long ago I can't remember. So I'm not going to bother saying it. I don't want to get it wrong. But anyway, so that was definitely the first impression I got, was that it was just creepy. Also, why didn't they turn a light on? Because it was so dark with the morning attire on everything. They had mannequins up throughout the house, which is one of those, oh, hell no. Like, I'm already reading and seeing ghosts everywhere. The last thing I need to be running into is a mannequin fully dressed as a woman in morning attire. And that's what they had all over the house. But they had, it was so dark. And I almost tripped into the full-size harp that they have in the parlor.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Not me tripping into it.
No. Well, that was my concern when it's so dark, is tripping over stuff like
tripping
that.
into things. Well, I turn around and I see Wilhelmina. And Wilhelmina did not present herself as the adult woman that she was. She presented herself as a young kid, which I found really weird, because when she spoke to me, she had dark brown hair, almost black. And she was dressed in a white dress, not a morning outfit, but it was a girl's dress from, the 1850s, maybe 1840s. So puffy, but anyway, and center part. And then she had her hair done in the sides, but she spoke to me like she was easily a 50-year-old matriarch of a family, like, who knew what everything was going. And I'm just looking at this kid and I'm like, okay, how you're presenting and how you're talking are two very different feelings. Like the aesthetics here are clashing incredibly. And she was really cranky that I looked immediately at the casket and not to her. Well, Amina Benninghoffen is by far the most well-known and well-spotted ghost in the entire building. She basically stays in the parlor. She'll sometimes go into the dining room and the front hall, but she's basically seen there. She's usually seen as a full-grown woman. I don't know why I was seeing her as a young kid, but which is weird. I don't usually see little kids at all. But yeah, she's definitely by far the most prevalent spirit that everyone has seen there.
It seemed like many people had encounters with her.
She is vocal. She's very, she's your classic Victorian ghost lady. Very prim, very proper. Things need to be in the place. If you don't do things in the correct social order, she gets really flustered. But I could tell something was missing, and I was just like, why am I getting the sense of something missing? And Kathy, who was, I think she's the curator or the director of the Historical Society, she'll probably drop in our DMs and go, I'm the blah 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 blah, which is fine.
Yes,
I hope so. I don't mind being corrected on history, because
the
we don't have a
worked there
huge
were very
dossier
nice.
this time. I'm working from a memory and I'm an overworked mom. So sometimes things go. So anyway, that's
It
the
all
scientific
comes
term
back
for
to
it.
poop.
It really does. It
That's
really
the name
does.
of this episode, everyone.
It all goes, oh, no. No one will listen to it. All the 5-year-olds may, but we have some cursing, so maybe that's not smart. Anyhow, so Kathy did mention when I taught her that she had purposely moved something out of its safety, but she did not tell me what. And I appreciated that, because I don't like being told things. Because if I pull it out of thin air, then it's kind of more of a, hey, maybe something's happened. I'm talking to someone who knows. And I kept looking at a hair wreath, and I kept thinking, ring. Is it this hair wreath? It's in the shape of a ring. It's a dark ring that I'm being shown. It must be this hair wreath. And they have a wreath. It's a memento mori that is made out of human hair, and it's a wreath, and they have a few of them. And I was like, this doesn't feel right, but it's a ring. It's a ring. Why am I seeing ring? And later, I have not gotten a confirmation from her from this weekend, but there is a wonderful, and we'll put it in the show notes, video that Kathy does about the ghosts of Benninghoffen. They did it last year. And she mentions that she will remove Wilhelmina's wedding ring from the room, as well as another keepsake, to keep them safe because they're irreplaceable. And probably what I was getting and not interpreting correctly, because that happens, was Wilhelmina telling me my ring is missing. And I was too dumb to figure it out.
Well, I mean, with any conversation where it's out of context, that's probably where it gets really difficult. And, even, with obviously you don't know these people personally, so references they make may not make any sense to you.
Yeah. And that's the communication problems we run into talking with the dead, especially if they're not contemporary dead. Because if you're trying to talk to Wilhelmina, who I think died before 1900, yet again, I'll probably be corrected on that. Really contemporary things like the telephone. I know Kathy mentioned the vacuum she's afraid of. She thinks it's going to suck her up. So sometimes you need to kind of reinterpret modern machines and inventions so that people that had lived and died in eras besides our own can not be afraid of them. So I'm looking at all the notes. That was it really for the first floor. We did run into James at the stairwell, which we don't know who. So the Connect system was pointing to a young boy's ghost sitting on a chair at the base of the staircase. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, he's there. He's really not that young. He's like 12. But well, I guess that's still young, but
Still
I'm like,
kid.
yeah, it's still kid, but like the way that they were describing it made him sound like he was 4. That's why I make that comment. And I'm like, no, he's not 4, he's like 12. But I look at them and I'm like, but who's the man standing here at the grandfather clock? He's associated loosely with James, but neither one of them actually are from the Benninghoffen family.
Mhm.
So no real resolution as to where they're from. They're probably from just hitchhikers from an artifact somewhere in the place.
Mhm. Well, that
Like the
probably
old
makes things
man's-
even more confusing too when something's attached to an item, you know, and not the
Mhm.
house. It probably makes
Yeah.
it really difficult.
Yeah. So then there was them. And then as you walk up the stairs to the second floor, from the landing to the second floor, it felt really heavy. And I'm like, something or somebody happened here. And it wasn't good. It was a real negative, heavy space, which was strange for the middle of the house. But that space also was where the addition of the house was put. So you may have somebody mentioned that they thought somebody may have been, this is going to get heavy for a second, trigger warning, I guess. Somebody may have been raped in that bathroom at the top of the staircase.
Ugh, that would be
No.
And I was like, I didn't get that, but something really negative happened. I think somebody
Oh,
fell
no.
down the staircase or hurt themselves significantly on the staircase.
Well, that's after seeing my cat fall down the stairs this week. I could picture that would be really easy to fall down the stairs and be significantly
Yeah.
injured.
Yeah. So, and they're carpeted stairs, so they're kind of slick. And so something happened there. I don't know what. It just was super negative.
Mhm.
And then we went into Wilhelmina's bedroom. And then I accidentally heard way too much of the history than I wanted to. But I should have just stood there and gone, la, 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 la. But I felt silly doing that with like, 6 other people in the room. So we're just sitting there listening, or actually standing, because you're not allowed to sit on anything in the entire building. So, and something brushed up right against my leg. It was that cat sensation, you know, the head, butt, and then the
Oh,
graceful
we've all
body.
experienced that, yes.
Mhm.
And then right as that happened, the team leader goes, by the way, there is a shadow entity that is not human that looks like a cat, and it runs around the house.
They didn't
And
say
I was
cat.
just, well, that okay. It's small like a cat,
They
and
described it as being spider-like.
spider-like. Okay, I forgot about that, but
Oh, so
Much
it wasn't a
creepier.
cat, a ghost of a cat.
They
No.
described it as a crawling entity with long arms. The cat is much nicer an image
but it was
than
smaller. It wasn't like
Mm-mm.
human size,
I
but
don't care.
it was a crawling entity. It's what we in the
See, I
community
thought it
call.
was a cute fuzzy black kitty
No, it's
cat.
a creeper.
No.
They
Oh, I'm
they have
sorry,
themselves a creeper.
I didn't want to ruin the image. It felt like a cat. It was kind of like one of those cartoons where you kind of feel a cat rubbing against you, and then you turn around and like it's like this creepy creature.
Yeah, that would be a good. In my mind, I interpreted it as being, if you've seen My Neighbor Totoro, there is a character called the Cat Bus, which is a cat. It's a furry bus
That's cute though.
in the shape of a cat, and it has 10 legs and a tail. Go look it up and just think about, in my cartoony brain, this is how I interpreted it, as just an all black version of that, like the size of a cat, which is why I say it was like a cat, because it was the size of a cat. It was not a huge entity, but it went right against my leg and brushed up on it. And as soon as they said that, I'm like, oh, so that's the thing that's brushing up on my legs. And that freaked everyone else out in the room. And I'm like, no, I didn't mean to do that. But
Well, you can't see this, but I have my feet off the floor right now. So
oh,
Mhm.
it's not coming. There's nothing in your
Mm.
house, Jen. You're fine.
Thank you. Okay.
You're
I'll
good.
relax.
Except
Nothing
no,
is-
I'm just teasing.
Don't you dare, Christina.
Yeah, don't you dare,
Well, if I
Christina.
said anything, it wouldn't make any difference anyway because I don't see anything.
The fun thing is listening to Kathy talk in this documentary. It was a webinar basically for the Historical Society. They did mention, or was it that? I also read a few different articles about the history. Mediums have sensed an unhuman entity in the building, but they think it is a elemental, which I've talked about before, from the wood that was used to build the frame of the house. So they think that's a protective entity, because when it scraped up against my leg, I wasn't like, oh my God. It was just like, oh, okay. It's just a protective entity on the house.
Way of saying hi, and it knows
probably
that a cat thing is loved or not terrifying.
It was probably, a way to approach a human that won't freak them out is just to pretend to be a cat.
Yeah.
Boom. And then I'm going to go present myself to the person who can sense me the best.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what it was. But that's what happened. I should draw my version of this thing so we can
please do.
Yeah.
That could be your Terror Tuesday.
It will be my Terror Tuesday illustration. So there was that, and then immediately next door we walked into the what would be the sick room. It was where people would convalesce. It was also the daughters' rooms when Pauline, and I can't remember the other daughter's name. That's their room, but one of them had, what was it? Yellow fever or cholera. She had a pretty near fatal disease. And that's where it was. It wasn't Pauline because she survived to 1947, but I think it was. It wasn't
tuberculosis, was it?
No, it wasn't TB. They would have sent her away for that one. But anyway, so you get in there, and apparently there's a lot of orb activity in this room, which I didn't see. And it also, when you're in a room, unless everything is dark, you're not going to see orb activity too well because your eyes are trying to constantly adjust with the light that it does have. So this was a partially lit room, and even without my light on, my flashlight on, and I swear I just said flashlight, not a fleshlight. Gotta correct myself on that one because it came out weird in my head.
Whole nother podcast.
Yes, that's a different.
We're not there.
Podcast. That's not our podcast.
But the entire room made me feel nauseous. And when I feel nauseous, that means get out, because something there doesn't want you there. So it's trying to project really negative things. They had a couple
of things like that, because there was the angry one that you talked to, which you'll be getting to.
Yeah,
not angry, but curmudgeonly is better.
Curmudgeon. He is a curmudgeon. He's particular too, but not in the same way as Wilhelmina. But anyway, so I felt really sick in that room, and Ashley was kind of imploring me to leave. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay in here and see if I can get anything. I got flashes of images of a young woman in the bed, sick and really, really sick, but that was about it. We also got a mysterious smoke smell that I smelled first, and then everyone on the second floor could smell, but not on the first floor. And when people went outside to check, they couldn't find anyone smoking. And it wasn't contemporary cigarette smell. It was like, it was tobacco for a pipe, which has a different scent. Mm-hmm. And I'm highly allergic to cigarettes, cigars, and tobacco smoke. So the minute I smell it, I start panicking because I'm like, oh no, I don't want to go into shock. So I'm just like, where's the source of this? And no one could find one. And then it eventually disappeared.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So moving into the other side, going to the other side of the second floor, there is McBride's. It's the master bedroom. And James McBride's desk is there. And for those of you who don't know, he is the first mayor of Hamilton, Ohio, and he was the secretary of the Miami University for 25 years. So big member of the community for Hamilton and Oxford, Ohio. They have his desk there. It's an artifact. He never, ever lived there. And works there. And oh boy, is he a grumpy man. He wasn't coming through too well with us that night, but apparently the place is not only haunted by him, but by also a pair of sisters, Isabella and Anna, and their portraits hang in the room above his desk. And the girls grew up as neighbors to the Benninghoffens, and they are seen running up and down the second floor playing peekaboo, for those of who could see them. I did not see them. They were not present that night. None of the kids are present. The only one I saw was Wilhelmina, and she actually wasn't a kid. So like she presented herself as one, but wasn't. But yeah, James McBride was there, but he was kind of like, nah. I tried to connect with him he surveyed a lot of the anthropological bits of around Miami University, a lot of the earthworks from the Hopewell and Adena cultures, and he would survey them. He never dug into them that I could tell. I am being corrected. He did dig into some of them, but he was just trying to really just lay them out, figure out what they were, and trying to appeal to that bit instead of the grouchy bit, because people were asking him all sorts of out of line questions, and I'm like, this man lived at the beginning of the 19th century. Like, why are you asking him about Apple Watches or things like that? It was
that is very
it was that I'm just, no one was actually asking him, but I'm trying to illustrate how absurd some of their questionings were, and not poking fun at people who had never gone on a ghost hunt before. But I was just like, these are weird questions to be asking anybody who's been dead for more than 10 years. So yeah, and also kind of barking orders that James was not going to work. That was not flying. It's the same with Wilhelmina. Neither one of them are going to respond to you when you're saying, turn on this light if I say X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, no, you have to be somewhat formal with these people. So, which brings me to the last spirit I actually encountered in this house. Actually, no, there's one more, but in this part of the house. And that was a man in Mary Alice's room, Mary Alice being the last maid, I think, or one of the last maids. And she was an elderly woman. So before you start thinking, oh, there was a young man in there. Well, I guess you could still think that. I really shouldn't be that quick to judgment. Go you, Mary Alice. But yeah, he was in his 30s, and it was around 1931 was the date he gave me. And he was in a 3-piece blue suit with gray pinstriping, and he had his collar starched and his hair was short and slicked back. And there was actually a portrait or a guy that looked a lot like him right behind him that I only saw when somebody turned on the light. But yeah, he said he was a visitor there, but he actually fits the description a lot of Peter Benninghoffen. And Peter lived to be in his 70s. And he was what I think people say was closeted LGBTQ. And I get the sense that was Peter that I was talking to, but he wasn't as loud, or as I think one of the members said, flamboyant as he usually is. And I was like, that's fine. He doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah. So
he was pristine. He was also very nice. I like talking to him. I would talk to him more. So the absolute last ghost that I ran into was in the basement. And that's when like Christina was trying to sketch stuff, and I come downstairs with my loud mouth going, oh, there's so many ghosts here.
I know. And I was just like, oh, I just like this cool oven.
Yeah.
Were you sitting down there by yourself?
Yeah, well, I had a flashlight and I was sketching from there because
you were with Hannah.
Yeah, and Kat saw all this stuff there.
Yeah, I was just like, so who I encountered was Little Turtle, who was a Miami war chief, and nice guy, just very welcoming. He's just like, welcome to down here. This is where my stuff is, and I just had to Have you ever seen Thor Ragnarok?
Yes.
And there's the guy that goes, "Behold my stuff." That's really what Little Turtle basically did, was behold my stuff. Which was funny because when I asked Kathy, because she had mentioned to me there was 2 artifacts of his in the basement. She did not tell me what. And she's just like, "I challenge you to go see where they are." And I showed her pictures of what I think it was. And she's like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Man, I was wrong. So wrong." She's like, "They're actually here." So yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. But he was nice. I like talking to him. And I just want to quickly run down because time is we have another location to talk about. Some of the other ghosts that have been said to be there.
But we were at this one much longer.
This was a really long, this was like 6 hours long.
Oh,
It
wow.
started like what, about 9?
I think it was
lasted
around
till 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was
So
a long
It was
one.
a long one.
We were punchy going home.
I bet.
So there's one that they call the Major, but it's actually Brigadier General Van der Veer. Oh, I'm going to get an email about that. Anyway, he said to haunt the study and the front halls, specifically around his bust. And he survived the 1863 Battle of Chickamauga in Tennessee. And he is, like I said, tied to his bust. The bust used to be at his house on D Street in Hamilton, and he just kind of hitchhiked over to the Benninghoffen. Let's see. Dr. Charles Keeley. I did not even know this. I did not sense this guy at all. He is a dentist. His dentist implements and his chair are actually on display there. He lived on North Street as well. And he loves to play with the printer at the volunteer desk. He loves technology. He practiced the early part of the 20th century, but this man loves technology. And there's a few times where I've run into entities that are from previous centuries who see things and just want to play with them. They're inventors.
That explains Troy's 3D printer problems.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it's Dr. Keeley who's there, but
exactly.
There's
helping.
Inventors never die. They're always around. They always want to play and tinker with things.
That actually is going to be an interesting segue into the observatory.
Yeah, really. There is a Spanish American War veteran, Lloyd H. Taylor, who's said to haunt the area. He likes to play with dowsing rods, though he was not the one operating them this time when I was there. And finally, there is yet another Native American spirit that is there. It is Blue Jacket, and he is found around the water fountain in the new part, the new annex bit, in between the restrooms, basically, in front of the event hall, which is where Ashley did her readings. And he's a Shawnee war chief and just hangs around. I guess his spirit hasn't been seen too much recently. But those are all that's the delightful bunch that we met at the Benninghoffen house. And
it was a cool place.
It's a cool place. I do want to note, where did I put that? That was a lot of lip smacking. I'm sorry, everyone.
That's okay.
Where did I put my note? Oh, okay. So there are actually 2 Benninghoffen houses in Hamilton, Ohio. Just because we couldn't make it simple. The first one that we're talking about is 327 North 3rd Street in Hamilton, Ohio. The second one is on Dayton Lane, and that one was built in 1892 by John Benninghoffen's son, Christian Benninghoffen. Yeah, you get the name, and his wife, Anna. And that one is also beautiful. It's huge, though. You could tell the 2 apart. So anyway, please go visit the Butler County Historical Society. I'm sure Kathy will be there and chat your ear off about all the ghosts.
I know. It was a cool place.
It was a very cool place. Jen, you would love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll definitely try to make it up there.
And so then.
2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago now?
Yes.
Yes. We got to go to the Cincinnati Observatory for a ghost hunt. And this was a fundraiser for the Cincinnati Observatory. And for those of you who may not have listened to the episodes or our podcast before, we actually did a detailed deep dive into the observatory's history as well as the history of the telescopes in episode 13, way back in our early days last year.
It was a prophecy.
It was a prophecy.
It has been
I never thought I'd be able
fulfilled.
to ghost hunt this place, but yet again, it was a spiritual realm paranormal who managed to do this fundraiser. Convince is a good one. And thank you. Is it Dean? I call it Dean Regis? Regis.
Yeah, Regis.
Thank you, sir, for letting us come in and look at the telescopes. He showed us Saturn and Jupiter before it
That
got
was
too
really
hazy
cool.
out. We got to go to
Yes.
the Mitchell building to do that, and we got to use the oldest telescope in the United States to do so.
Mhm.
It's always fun. I love it. I'm a big astronomy nerd, so
Mhm.
that was fun. And then we got to go into the actual the old building with the new telescope, which
was
I
built
had
in
never-
1904.
yeah. The telescope was built in 1904. The old building is 1873.
Mhm.
And I never been in there before. It's not normally not open. The Mitchell building, which is the new building, is usually the one that's open because they're like, look at our old telescope. But I
It
kind
was
of get
cool.
why they don't open it now. So Christina, before I talk more, why don't we? What were your thoughts of the place?
I mean, it's an incredible treasure sort of in Hyde Park. I mean, you have this old school observatory, and for a little context, in the late 1800s, a lot of these sorts of professions like astronomy, anthropology, archaeology were sort of gentlemen's professions. People that had a lot of money would build these observatories and or research centers or whatever. They were funded by someone rich that was into that sort of thing.
Yeah,
And I
because
suspect that was
they
the
didn't
case
need to
with this-
work.
Yeah, many of the the Hubble telescope. Edwin Hubble was a rich dude who, built a big old telescope. I want to say in the Southwest. That's where his was. I don't know.
I can't remember. It's been a long day.
I know. We all need to watch Cosmos again.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, it was.
Sagan is coming through going, yes.
Now, that's a whole lot of interesting connotations. Anyway, so the newer building with the older telescope. I mean, it's really cool how it's all like cranks. It's very steampunk, like cranks, and everything's
yes.
manually done, except for the movement. A big telescope has to have some sort of motor to follow because the Earth is moving so fast. Basically, the telescope tracks whatever body you're looking at. So if you've ever looked through a telescope that's not got a motor in it, whatever you're looking at does this.
It just shifts right out of view, and then you have to sit there and realign everything.
We're on something that's spinning.
Yeah.
And we don't notice it because we're used to it. But when we look at other things, we're just spinning right past them.
Yeah. And rather
you sure?
quickly.
Yeah.
I thought we were flat. I didn't think we were round.
Well,
Kidding.
I'm going to send that ghost cat to you.
Please do not. I was joking.
I mean, my
Take it
impressions
back.
were, I would like to come back. I kind of would like to join their club because you can rent a telescope there. Well, not rent. I think you can use. They have a bunch of telescopes you can use if you are a member.
Members. Yeah, I encourage everyone to become a member of the Cincinnati Observatory. You can lend out, or not quite rent. I guess rent is the best. Borrow.
But
You can borrow a telescope for a month.
It was a super interesting place. I think that, thinking in the spirit of Carl Sagan, Dean was a good sport about it. You could tell he's probably he even said he's a skeptic. I don't think that he would.
I think he's a cynic.
Yeah, he pretty much said, I'm a skeptic, because they said, is anyone a skeptic here? And he raised his hand. And so I feel like he was being a good sport that was kind of coerced into doing a ghost hunt at this place where he worked, where he, has an extreme affection for. I mean, he's very much a local educator in the city. And, I think it's
And
the
he's
word out
doing
about-
something for the National Parks Department too.
Yes, he's going to be at the Grand Canyon. He's got like basically scientists residency. We talk about artists residencies.
Cool.
He's going to be observing the night sky over the Grand Canyon for a month, I think in November,
Yeah, I think that's right. So
he's
yeah,
a good
congrats
sport.
to him.
But
Yeah.
it was funny
Yay.
because when we got there, everybody kind of treated Kat like, oh, it's like, you're here, we have a medium here, yay.
Yeah, I
And-
didn't expect that. I'm not usually the only
And that
medium
was
to
really
come to a
exciting.
party.
But it was interesting because and you can give your experience because you said that, well, I don't even want to say, I'll let you say it.
Oh, about the okay. So
yeah. I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, it's so I'm gonna say the observatory is very tight-lipped about what I'm about to talk about. They have every right to be. So take this with grains of salt. So we go inside and we're in the old building that was built 1873, and we go upstairs. Everything in this building creaks. If a cricket lands on a stair step, you hear it. And we're walking up the stairs, and on the landing there is a woman dressed up in 1950s outfit. She has her hair done like Marilyn Monroe. It is platinum blonde, clearly been bleached to this because that's not her normal hair color. And she's wearing a yellow and mustard yellow brown plaid shirt that is buttoned. It has a collar. She has it sneakily buttoned to just before her, like right over her breastbone. And then she has it's flared out. And then she's wearing a pencil skirt that was a darker, like burnt umber color. And then she's wearing high-heeled shoes. And as we're walking up the stairs, I literally hear her high-heeled shoes. And I get the distinct impression that she was like a secretary or a helpful person around the building. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. She's here. She's like going to take messages and take notes for us. And that's definitely the feeling I got. There was also something in the room that was the storage room across the little hall from the entrance into the main telescope room. And I'm like, somebody's in there. I feel like they're an assistant or like somebody who's a young astronomer doing a residency or something here. Old. I get definitely 1960s, 1970s feel from him. More recent with the other spirits I was experiencing at Benninghoffen. And we're in the main telescope room, and this is the big research telescope, the one that's from 1904. And one of the docents shows us how it moves around, and she opens it, and we absolutely did not have the AC on at all. We did have the dome open, and there was two windows that are like porthole windows that are on either side looking west to east, and those were open, but it was not a very windy day. It was kind of stagnant.
Warm. It was
very warm.
Yeah, a warm, sort of moist night.
And
Ew.
I know.
moist. So I'm going to refer to him as Sir, but if you've listened to our episode 13, you know who exactly I am talking about. So of course they set up their Connect system and they pick up somebody right in front of me. And as they're picking him up, I look at them and I say, it's gotten colder here. It feels like the AC's on. Like I'm getting wind gusts where there's people standing in front of both of the windows. And I'm like, is there any air coming through? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, it's colder here. And the Connect system's picking up on a body. And before I know it, I am looking at Sir, who is staring at me in his pants that are up. They're tweed pants with pleats in the front. And he has suspenders on and a bow tie and a white shirt. And his pants are hiked up to his hip or his waist, like really high, 1940s style with the black patent leather shoes. And he's staring at me and he has his glasses on. And I'm like, hi. And he's just like, who are you? And I'm sitting there like, I can see you, and they can tell you're here. And it was cooler by about 15 degrees wherever Sir was in the room. And the secretary was making the lights turn on and off for him. So like you would ask a question to him and she would respond.
That's weird.
Well, that's the
Sexist.
secretary. It is sexist, but that's also the world they lived in.
Yeah.
So,
Christina, did you feel the degree difference?
I wish I had. It was kind of stuffy in there. But they were actually seeing it on thermometers.
Yeah, they had a FLIR camera.
Wow.
And they
Okay.
could see it. And
Yeah,
they were
it wasn't
tracking
by
it.
me. It wasn't by me. So
Okay.
it wasn't in the cool.
We
areas.
actually had a scientific equipment to track the temperature, and it was tracking it. And
Oh, cool.
it was one of those heat sensors, the ones where if it's cooler, it's going to be blue or purple.
Mhm.
And the warmer it is, it turns closer to red and then back to purple when it's super hot. Like a
it
magenta.
got down pretty low, 63, I thought.
63 was the coolest. And we were
Wow.
up there for an hour asking questions. And it was really hard to talk to him because I'm just like, I know who you are. I want to ask you questions, but we're not allowed to ask or even refer to these at all. And I'm just like, how am I supposed to talk to you if I
Yeah.
can't
Was that
actually...
a stipulation of having the event there?
I feel like it's a stipulation, yes. So I was like, I'm going to honor this. I'm not going to talk about it. We've already talked about it, like I said, episode 13. But he's there. He is walking around. I asked them, I turned to one of the docents and I go, do you get somebody walking around here all the time? You hear just somebody walking? And they're like, yeah, we do. And I'm like, that's him. He's walking around. He isn't as active at night as you'd think he is. He came here every day at 8 a.m. So
Wow.
you're going to hear him. He's the most active between 8 a.m. to about 2 a.m. And then there's about a 6-hour lull time where you won't hear him because that's where
Wow.
he would go home.
Yeah.
And he lived next door and, well, one avenue away, but he could walk through the park to get to his house. And yeah, he's there almost all the time, walking around, still observing stuff, still working as a scientist. And
Wow.
he really likes Dean. Like all of them do, because there isn't just him. There's the other directors also pop in. And the minute Dean walked up next to me, I got the sense of everybody loves him. Like all the directors love him and what he's doing. So it was just, if anything, if it's any consolation, I know he's not a big believer in this, but he's getting a lot of support. Yeah, he's getting a lot of support from the other side for his endeavors and bringing so much attention to the observatory and doing so many good things. And they love him for that. So
I think Dean, I'm pretty sure he's well loved in the city too.
Oh,
He is.
All of us.
I mean,
he seems like a cool guy.
He was very nice. And it
Yeah.
was cool that he was there and let us look out the telescope and everything.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
That was the coolest thing.
Well, that wasn't where our night ended though. Our night ended outside.
Which I was sketching. I started sketching up in the area where you had the most activity.
Yeah,
by myself. And of course I didn't see anything and was sketching and my sketch. And then I came down and I was looking for you all and they took you to a rock.
They took me to a rock.
You got a rock.
I got a boulder that had dog poop behind it. It was great. So romantic. So I appreciated what they were doing and I did not.
I thought it was kind of cool because they were like, hey Kat, come over here.
I appreciate it. I actually am happy they did that. So they were blind reading me on a location, and which is fine. You want to test? No, the team, the paranormal team.
Okay.
I don't know if they meant to do this or not, but I don't know the history of the place other than the observatory. So they took me somewhere next to it that I did not know the history about. And they were having me read the place for them to see if I was picking up on the same stuff that they already know about.
Okay.
That's fine. This is actually the best way to, if you have a medium that's working with your group, you want to see if they're actually catching stuff and actually doing what they're claiming to do. It's good. It's a control. It's the best way you can test a medium. So they took me to this boulder, and my initial, I walk up to it and I go, this is not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be so many meters that way, closer to the actual building and closer to the road. And they're like, well, touch it, see who you see what you have. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable here. I don't feel nauseous, but I feel very heavy again, kind of like the staircase. And something happened here, and I don't know what, but it was not good. And that was unfortunately all I could read for them. I was like, something bad happened here. I know, super descriptive. It's not in the right place. I know, super descriptive. It's supposed to be where that pine tree is right now. And then also, why are we surrounded by a bunch of Native American people? But here's the other thing. I am super confused because the Native American people, I believe they're Miami. They could be Shawnee. I'm not good at telling the difference between the two, unfortunately. When they're in plain clothes and they're dead, and they're a good eighth a mile away, sometimes you can't tell. But I was like, why are they here? It's a large group of about 30 people staring at us. They're here. The rock is super negative. And then I actually called it the murder rock. I just said, why? You got them, the murder rock, and the observatory. And I'm like, here's the thing. I am confused because none of these people are related in any way, shape, or form. They came first, the observatory came second, and Murder Rock came third. And I'm like, why am I feeling this way? And I was just like, please tell me what happened. And I do have something. And I am going to go into a true crime minute with Kat. Okay? So
True crime.
The sources.
We need music.
Yeah, So the sources for True Crime Minute with Kat is Cincinnati Magazine, the Cincinnati Enquirer, and then oh no, not the New York Times. So Cincinnati Enquirer, and Cincinnati Magazine. Those were the two that I could get. And this is the Metzger case of 1986, the most recent case we're going to talk about in a while. So what happened March 5th, the evening of March 5th, 1986, was that Karen Whiteling Metzger, at the time 29 years old, was forced onto a motorcycle by her ex-husband, Ronald Metzger, at the time also 28. And Karen, they landed at the Murder Rock, which at the time was at the end of the cul-de-sac observatory place, just in front of the observatory. They get off the motorcycle, and as Ronald has his back turned, Karen shot him 4 times dead.
Wow.
At the Murder Rock. So let's go a little bit into their back history.
At the Murder Rock.
At the Murder Rock. So August 2nd, 1974, both of them are 18 years old and got married. And just a few months later, Daniel Metzger, their son, was born on February 23rd, 1975. And by all accounts from their neighbors, Ronald was a terrible abuser of his family and would knock them around almost on a daily basis. And she would run from the house all the time trying to seek help. He had a rap sheet that is so long I can't even read it. It would take forever. So he was not a great guy. He also had a stint in a psychiatric hospital on a psychiatric hold. So not a guy that was even keeled. Very abusive man to everyone. He also had a really, I want to call it a fetish for pyromancy. He liked to set things on fire, including their house at one point, and the forest behind their house. So on September 24th, 1976, Karen divorced his ass and got out of Dodge. She went to school. She graduated in 1982 from the University of Cincinnati with high honors, and she became a teacher for our local school district. And that's where our story starts. So Miss Metzger is living in Some accounts say Hyde Park, some places say Mount Lookout. It's that kind of gray area along Delta, that Delta Avenue, that is kind of both. And she had reported his harassment and abuse to the police, which would be District 2. And they told her, like, he had been the suspect in a pipe bomb blast that had happened in her house that sent her sailing across her own house.
Wow.
Somebody had put a log with a pipe bomb in it, and when she lit the fire, it exploded, sending her across the room. And she thought it was her ex-husband. And the Cincinnati Police Department told her, hey, the next time you see him pull around your house, make sure you catch their plates so that we can try to arrest him. And she did. She was in a really big custody battle for her son. And Ronald had actually, when he did have Daniel at one point, drove all the way down to Georgia and then demanded that she meet him down there to get their son back. And she said no. And eventually they got back to Cincinnati. So not a great relationship. He had been stalking her for basically a decade, harassing her and threatening her. So on the night of March 5th, 1986, he comes by on his motorcycle again, and she hops in his car, or in her car, and chases him because she's trying to get his license plate number down. Eventually, he rams his motorcycle into her car enough times, sending her off the road, then stops, forces her onto the motorcycle, and then drives her up to the observatory, which is surrounded by a large green area, pulls her off the motorcycle and says, I'm going to kill you in the woods, and then I'm going to go find our son and kill him. What may have triggered all this was that Karen had just gotten engaged and she was moving on. She was going to marry another man. This man, her fiance, had given her a gun, and it happened to be in her coat pocket. And when Roland turned around, for whatever reason, maybe to put the kickstand down, she shot him 3 times and he fell to the ground. And then he tried to get up and she shot him one more time, dead.
Not today.
Not today. And so what she did was she, as calmly as she could, walked to the nearest house, sat down on the porch, and waited for the police. And what happened was the school board, so the police took her in, took her statement. They already had a record of domestic abuse and violence with these two. She was suspended from her job for a few days without pay. But when basically the grand jury refused to indict her on anything, not manslaughter, not murder. They're like, we have too much history here. And the prosecutors were kind of irked that they couldn't prosecute her, but the grand jury refused to indict. So she was let go after $100 bail, $100 bail.
Wow.
And which I don't know what it is in today's money, but yeah, it really low. And she got her job back and just melted back into the population.
Oh my God.
Is she still around?
I have no idea. I did not do a background check to figure out where she is.
Somebody will probably let us know.
Maybe.
I hope she got married and lived happily ever after.
And that's what I'm hoping. And
she probably changed her last name. And
and I would get out of Cincinnati if I was her, just to get out of this toxic area.
Well, considering the huge article the Inquirer had on it,
there was quite a few.
Yeah.
Yes, they're very dramatic about it. The media, just kind of found something and just clung on to it.
Grabbed it with their teeth and shook.
Yeah, the July article from Cincinnati Magazine, whomever wrote it at the time, which I'm sure I can find it because I took screen grabs, very floral language to describe this entire situation. I was just like, very sensationalized as well.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, she survived, Daniel survived, and Roland got shot. So that's what happened at Murder Rock. And they did move the rock. The reason why it had been moved, because it had been a crime scene. And whoever owns the property, which I believe is the University of Cincinnati, decided, hey, this may not be the coolest thing to have right next to our observatory. So they moved it a few hundred yards into the park, and now dogs poop on it.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a
And,
recollection of the name, but I don't remember the story that well.
yeah, it would be the Metzger case.
I mean, I don't condone murder really, but in a case like that,
yeah,
this is a case.
Those people don't stop until someone's dead. They
Yeah.
really don't.
We've learned a lot with handling domestic issues. We haven't
Yeah.
learned enough before we get all the angry emails going, rah.
Right.
But these should be handled in a very different way. And the
Yeah.
police maybe are not the best. Your normal beat cops
Right.
may not be the best arbiters of safety.
Mhm,
Maybe get some psychologists on more of these.
mhm.
I'm a little
Districts.
shocked that she didn't get indicted. That's almost unheard of.
It was-
Especially
and
when it's a woman killing a man.
that's what the prosecutors were saying. And basically public favor was all in her court. Like,
Wow. It's amazing.
yeah. So I hope she had a happy ending. I hope she did not
Me
stay
too.
around here. And
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, everything failed her. The
I know.
psychiatric hold failed her. Like, yeah. So anyway, so that's what the story of Murder Rock is. It's this 86 case. And
So did you pass the test?
I think I got a C. Maybe a C minus. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't the one grading me, but and also it was a bad time to test me because I freaked them out because I'm like, I know exactly who this is. This is the former director of the observatory that's up there.
Mhm.
But I'm like, I can't say anything. And I freaked out one of their team members. I'm like, before you freak out, we already did an episode on this location. So I already know the history. So
Yeah.
I'm coming from a biased point of view already. And now if we
Right.
go back to Benninghoffen anyway, now I've done all this history. So I can talk to everyone and go, well, you're this and you're this and you're this.
Right.
And so now those views are biased as well, which is why I like doing these cold readings.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because then I can kind of
I mean,
Discover
you
it
said
naturally.
something, but you just didn't have any of the details.
it was just like what freaked him out was when I did the
Murder
cold
Rock.
reading at Doty about the guy
Oh,
in the agriculture
in the barn.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that freaked them out because they're like, how do you know this? And I'm like, because he told me. And yeah, I think they were hoping for a repeat of that. And
Ah.
I'm like, yeah, which I totally get.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, doing the cold readings like that is how you train, because
Is
you
it?
start
Uh-huh.
you start understanding who's talking to you and how to interpret things better. Like the ring situation I had at the house.
Mhm.
And that's how you train, is by having people challenge you. That's why I'm not upset that happened at all.
Mhm, mhm.
So
I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I thought it was cool how they kind of took you there. And
yeah, I,
Oh, so it was just you two? It wasn't like the rest of the.
no, the rest of the team was there also
there were some
hearing
other
me
people
yammer
there
on.
too, but
Okay.
you know, I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if their expectations were super, super high. I mean, you know, I think it is what it is. I think they're used to, it probably just depends on, I mean, there's a couple different factors that probably, you know, work with it.
But
You know,
Oh, cool.
I mean,
I'm really. I know I've said this. Sad that I missed both of these.
mhm. I mean, it
But-
could be also, you know, we're talking about the factors. It depends kind of what's presenting itself at the time too.
mhm.
You know, and it seems like if you have a very specific preconceived notion of any of this stuff, you're going to be disappointed, because I
Mhm.
think that, and you know, going back to the reading before, I think if you're expecting them to say, oh my gosh, I see, you know, your brother Fred standing next to you and he says, remember the frying pan. If that's what you're expecting, it may not be that at all. You know, you're going to be disappointed. it might be something where it's like, oh, it's this instead, and they're talking about your Winnie the Pooh costume.
Yeah, they're going to share memories more than like specific items.
Sometimes what sticks to someone around you is not what stuck to you.
Yeah,
like
that's a good point.
You know, how people remember stuff, you know, is different, and your impression is different. And so that's probably why it's so hard sometimes to tell why something attaches to someone, because the thing that they're saying, remember when we did this, was important to them, but not necessarily you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't know what your interactions, and in this case, I think it was like not a memory that she would have associated with this person. They were just saying, oh, I saw you in the Winnie the Pooh costume. It's kind of like when you're somewhere and someone you know comes up and says something random to you, and you're like, what? I don't remember that. I mean, I run into people all the time that are like, remember? And I'm like, I don't remember meeting you before.
Yeah. Ouch, Christina.
Yeah.
My
God. I mean it. I mean, when you meet a lot of people, sometimes you might not remember things as well as. I mean, it's nothing personal.
It's like dwelling on something stupid you said at a party, and everybody else forgot it in 2 seconds, and you dwell on it for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the most notable is I remember asking my brother about a play we were in high school. I was like, "Who had that cast party?" And Hans was like, "Don't you remember? We did." I was like, "What?"
Oh man.
And he went into this whole thing, and I was like, "Oh, okay." I had totally totally. You know, and then that it's just because certain memories that you remember, and it's really well, don't stick necessarily to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
And so that's probably what makes this all the more difficult, is a loved one might have a totally different recollection. They remember, especially if it's like a parent or something, they're remembering you as in a way that you've not seen yourself in a long time, you know. So,
yes.
Yeah.
you know, they might remember you playing with that favorite Raggedy Ann doll that you had, and you don't really care about the Raggedy Ann doll.
Right.
You're like, oh, remember you loved that Raggedy Ann, and you're like, Raggedy Ann. My favorite toy was a Lego.
And then that Raggedy Ann got possessed and threatened to kill you.
People. Yeah,
okay, don't say that. I have a Raggedy Ann doll sitting in a trunk right here in my living room.
My godmother gave me a
I
Raggedy
am
Ann
going
doll.
to stay silent and say, for all of our listeners, if you would like to share your own hometown haunts
and Raggedy Ann stories.
Next week is our 50th episode, and we would love to celebrate it, sharing everyone's ghost stories.
I think Natty might be joining us.
Natty, I hope Natty joins us. It will also be our Halloween episode. So Ghost Stories Galore. That should be the title of that episode. Ghost Stories Galore.
Extravaganza.
Yes. So you can send those to our email at hometownhauntedmail@gmail.com. And I think we can wrap this up and say, everyone, from us over here to you out there, good night and stay weird.
Bye.
Bye.